Canada's Air Force guards one of the world's largest airspaces, from the Arctic to NATO operations abroad. It serves as a shield for the homeland and a crucial pillar of alliance defense. For decades, this role was upheld by the CF-eighteen Hornet, a resilient fighter that became the face of Canadian air power. Generations watched these jets carve contrails across northern skies, intercepting Russian aircraft or flying with American fighters. But time took its toll. The once formidable Hornets began to show their age, their systems growing increasingly obsolete. Maintenance teams worked endlessly, scavenging spare parts and extending airframes beyond their intended lifespan. Mechanics and engineers kept them alive, but a replacement was no longer a question of if, but when. By the mid-2020s, Ottawa found itself at a critical crossroads, with a choice that would determine Canada's defense for decades. Which aircraft would guard the skies of the future? On paper, the answer appeared straightforward. The United States F-35 Lightning II, a stealthy fifth-generation marvel already in service with allied nations, seemed like the obvious pick. Canada had invested billions into its development and was already integrated into its global supply chain. Washington reassured Ottawa that buying into the program meant joining the most advanced ecosystem of air power ever created. Yet, behind the polished rhetoric, quiet doubts began to emerge regarding rising maintenance costs and delayed deliveries. Reports circulated about software failures and pilots complaining about grounded aircraft, making officials uneasy about spiraling per-hour flight costs. Strategists began asking uncomfortable questions. Could Canada afford to tie its entire air defense to another nation's technology and political agenda? Was stealth capability worth the surrender of independence? Then, unexpectedly, another contender re-entered the stage, the Gripen E. Built by Sweden, a nation famous for neutrality and engineering excellence, the Gripen carried a design philosophy rooted in survival under pressure. Like Canada, Sweden faced vast wilderness and brutal winters, forging the Gripen to be practical, adaptable, and unpretentious. At first, the Swedish jet did not capture headlines, lacking the sleek marketing campaigns of the F-35. But those who studied it closely recognized something profound. It was rugged, versatile, cost-effective, and offered genuine sovereignty. The Gripen came with an unprecedented offer: complete operational control, with an open software architecture allowing Canada to customize and integrate its own weapons. There would be no hidden locks, no need for Washington's approval to deploy or modify the fleet, making the proposal revolutionary. For the first time in decades, Ottawa could envision a truly independent air force, not bound by invisible digital chains. But independence, as history often shows, is never simple, especially in military procurement where airplanes are symbols of alliance loyalty. Buying the F-35 would further entrench Canada within America's defense framework, reassuring some but alarming others. Walking away, however, carried heavy risks: economic retaliation, diplomatic tension, even strain within NATO itself. Inside government offices, the debate became intense, with F-35 advocates arguing against endangering industrial contracts and Canadian jobs. They reminded officials that Canadian factories already produce components for the Lightning II, and reversing course could mean economic fallout. Their opponents, the quiet proponents of the Gripen, countered with logic rooted in practicality. They highlighted the Swedish jet's ability to operate from frozen runways, its low maintenance, and resilience in Arctic conditions. They presented spreadsheets comparing turnaround times and operational costs, proving the Gripen was not just cheaper, but smarter. The conflict boiled down to a simple yet profound divide: dependency versus autonomy. Outside the government, few Canadians were aware of how fierce the internal struggle had become. Public news coverage reduced the issue to sound bites about price and performance, ignoring the deeper implications of national sovereignty. Behind the scenes, the lobbying war was relentless, with Lockheed Martin weaving its influence into political and industrial circles. Lobbyists emphasized partnership with the United States, warning that deviation could bring unforeseen consequences. Meanwhile, in Stockholm, Saab took a different approach, extending offers no other defense company had dared propose. They promised technology transfer, co-production rights, and local assembly, offering to build part of the aircraft in Canadian factories. They would train Canadian engineers and share critical systems knowledge, something the Americans, with their closed F-35 platform, did not offer. This contrast defined the true essence of the debate. The Gripen symbolized freedom and self-determination. The F-35, security and dependence. Choosing the Swedish aircraft would signal a bold assertion of sovereignty, a declaration that Canada could stand apart even within an alliance. Choosing the American jet would preserve harmony, but at the cost of autonomy. As months turned into years, the tension escalated, with Washington's reminders growing firmer, the subtext unmistakable. Intelligence sharing agreements, NORAD obligations, and trade cooperation were all quietly mentioned as potential leverage points. The implication was clear: deviation from the F-35 program might invite repercussions beyond defense. Sweden, by contrast, offered partnership without pressure, emphasizing collaboration rather than control. They invited Canada to join in co-designing future systems, promising shared innovation rather than purchased obedience. They described a fleet maintained on Canadian soil, customized by Canadian technicians, and optimized for Canadian conditions. Within the Air Force itself, opinions were divided but measured. Pilots admired the F-35's technology but doubted its practicality. The F-35 was complex, delicate, and costly to maintain, while the Gripen was a mechanic's dream, simple, resilient, and optimized for quick redeployment. In the unforgiving North, simplicity often meant survival. Yet for the general public, these discussions remained hidden behind bureaucratic language. What should have been a debate about independence and identity was reduced to spreadsheets and delivery timelines. Few citizens realized that the decision would determine not just what aircraft Canada flew, but whether those aircraft could ever take off without foreign permission. Even after the official choice was announced, uncertainty lingered. The government's public explanation spoke of modernization and alliance commitment, but the unanswered question remained: how much freedom did Ottawa truly possess? Was it guided by strategic necessity or by the quiet weight of American influence? At its core, the Gripen debate was never about technology alone. It was about the meaning of sovereignty in a world dominated by powerful alliances. The Swedish offer represented not merely an aircraft, but an opportunity for Canada to reclaim control of its own defense destiny. The American alternative offered safety and prestige, but came shackled with dependency. So the question remains: what price should a nation pay for independence? The Gripen offered defiance. The F-35 offered comfort. One represented courage, the other familiarity. In the end, the aircraft were just symbols. The real issue was whether Canada would continue to operate under another's authority or finally take full command of its skies. The decision reached far beyond procurement. It was about who truly commands the future of Canadian defense. And that is why, even today, long after the contracts have been signed, the echo of that choice still lingers. It serves as a reminder that sometimes the greatest battles for freedom are fought not in the skies, but in the boardrooms and corridors where sovereignty itself is decided.